Harry's vault was stacked with gold. The Weasleys' vault had a single coin. In a world where magic can fix almost anything, why is wealth so uneven? The answer lies in dark truths that run deep through wizarding history. Truths that explain who gets rich, who stays poor, and why. The dark truth behind the Potter fortune. Harry Potter grew up believing his wealth was simply an inheritance, the legacy of a noble, pure-blood family. But the truth behind the gold stacked in Vault 687 is far darker. The Potter fortune began with Linfred of Stinchcombe, a 12th century wizard remembered as a kindly eccentric. To his muggle neighbors, he was a harmless healer with odd plants and potions. In reality, he was testing experimental remedies on people who had no idea magic even existed. Those cures evolved into staples of wizarding medicine, like Scalagrow and Pepper-Up Potion. The result? Linfred turned the pain, sickness, and ignorance of others into piles of gold that his 7 children inherited. Centuries later, Harry's grandfather, Fleamont Potter, repeated the cycle. His Sleek Easy's hair potion became a bestseller, marketed as the cure for unruly hair. But beneath the catchy slogan was the same truth. Fleamont built his fortune on insecurity, making wealth out of appearance anxiety. He sold the company at a vast profit, quadrupling the Potter riches that James, and eventually Harry, would inherit. When Harry first stepped into Gringotts, he wasn't looking at a treasure earned through courage or sacrifice. He was staring at generations of gold built on exploitation, of muggles who never knew, of witches and wizards pressured to buy, of suffering that had been commodified. That is the first dark truth of wizarding wealth. Behind every shining coin in Harry's vault lies someone else's misfortune. Aristocratic power. If the Potters built their fortune on invention, the Malfoys represent an older, darker truth. Wealth preserved through blood, land, and politics. The Malfoys didn't need to invent anything. They didn't need to create cures or potions to sell. Their fortune came from aristocratic privilege, passed down generation after generation. By the time Harry enters the story, Lucius Malfoy can flaunt unimaginable wealth, but almost none of it came from labor. It came from what the Malfoys already controlled: estates, property, and their carefully guarded position among the so-called Sacred 28. The Sacred 28 was more than a list of pure-blood families. It was a gatekeeping mechanism, a way of declaring who belonged among the wizarding elite and who didn't. Families like the Malfoys used their status on this list to concentrate wealth, marry only among themselves, and shut out anyone deemed impure. The Potters were excluded despite being pureblood at the time, simply because their name was too common and suspected of Muggle taint. The Malfoys, meanwhile, weaponized their inclusion, using their wealth to buy influence at the Ministry and even curry favor with Voldemort when it suited them. The dark truth here is clear. In the wizarding world, wealth isn't just about gold in Gringotts, it's about bloodline, perception, and power. The Malfoys didn't just inherit money, they inherited a system designed to keep them on top, while others were pushed down, generation after generation. The Weasley curse. The Weasleys should have been comfortable. They were pure blood, part of the Sacred 28, and tied to another established family through Molly's pre-wet bloodline. By all logic, their vault at Gringotts should have mirrored the Malfoys, not sat nearly empty. Yet their poverty was so extreme that Ron arrived at Hogwarts with hand-me-down robes and a broken wand. On the surface, the explanation seems simple: too many children, one modest salary, and endless school expenses. But the numbers don't add up. By the time Harry knew them, several of the older siblings had steady incomes, and Fred and George were running a wildly profitable joke shop. Yet the family's financial situation never seemed to improve. This has led to one of the darkest theories in wizarding circles. The Weasleys were cursed. Their reputation as blood traders, purebloods who openly defended Muggleborns, would have made them a target for vengeful families in the Sacred 28. If such a curse was cast on their bloodline generations ago, it would explain why, no matter how hard they worked, money seemed to slip through their fingers. Even their rare stroke of good fortune, winning the Daily Prophet's grand prize, vanished almost instantly on a trip to Egypt. The dark truth is that the Weasleys may have been punished for their values. While others hoarded wealth through blood purity and political power, the Weasleys were left with almost nothing, not by accident, but by design. Poverty through prejudice. Not every wizard's wealth, or lack of it, can be explained by inheritance or bloodlines. Sometimes poverty was deliberately manufactured through prejudice. No story captures this more clearly than that of Remus Lupin. From the moment he was bitten as a child, Lupin's fate was sealed. Brilliant, compassionate, and one of the most talented wizards of his generation, he should have lived a life of opportunity. Instead, he lived in rags. Every description of him reinforces it. Shabby robes, a battered suitcase, a man who looked as though he hadn't eaten properly in weeks. The reason wasn't a lack of ability, it was that wizarding society refused to employ werewolves. Employers knew the stigma attached to his condition and dismissed him long before they saw his skill. Even when he found work, he had to leave before anyone noticed the monthly absences tied to the full moon. He was locked in a cycle of poverty that no amount of talent could break. This wasn't an accident, it was systemic. A society that prided itself on magical advancement used prejudice as a form of control, ensuring those who were different were kept powerless. Lupin is the proof that magic didn't make the wizarding world more just. It made it more efficient at enforcing inequality. Wizarding banking. Every wizard's fortune, from the Malfoys' vaults of gold to the single coin in the Weasleys' account, flowed through the same place, Gringotts. On the surface, it seemed like goblins held the keys to wizarding wealth. They ran the bank, controlled the vaults, and enforced security so tight that even dragons were used as guards. But the truth is more twisted. Goblins were never treated as equals. Wizards depended on them to guard their wealth but refused to share power. Goblins were denied wands, denied political voice, and denied full recognition as magical beings. Their mastery of metalwork and banking was tolerated, even exploited, but they were kept in a permanent state of subjugation. This imbalance created an uncomfortable paradox. The wizarding elite trusted goblins to protect their fortunes, but the same elite passed laws to ensure goblins never controlled their own destiny. When goblins tried to claim ownership of the artifacts they crafted, arguing that goblin-made items should return to goblin hands upon the owner's death, wizards branded them greedy and untrustworthy. The dark truth is that the entire financial system of the wizarding world rested on exploitation. Goblins ran the bank, but they were never allowed to benefit from the system they sustained. Every vault in Gringotts, from Harry's to Voldemort's, was a monument to this hypocrisy. Wealth locked away by wizards, maintained by a race they systematically oppressed. Harry's silence on wealth. Harry had more gold than he knew what to do with, but the Weasleys, the family who fed him, sheltered him, and treated him as their own, lived in constant poverty, yet Harry never offered money to help. On the surface, this looks cruel. Why wouldn't he use some of his overflowing fortune to ease the suffering of the family that cared for him? The truth is more uncomfortable. Harry was deeply self-conscious about his wealth. He felt awkward even looking at the mountains of gold in his vault, trying to shield it from Ron's eyes. To him, offering money would have felt like an insult to their friendship, a way of cheapening loyalty by putting a price tag on it. But there's another layer, the Weasleys' pride. Molly and Arthur would never have accepted charity, even from someone they loved. They refused Hogwarts financial aid, they refused pity, and they would have refused Harry's gold. The one time Harry gave money to Fred and George, he had to disguise it as prize winnings from the Triwizard Tournament. But money wasn't the only source of power. Titles, ranks, and positions in wizarding society mattered just as much, and sometimes even more. From Aurors and Cursebreakers to Unspeakables and Magizoologists, each title carried influence, or revealed exactly where someone stood in the hierarchy of magic. So if you want to see how wizarding society really worked, beyond gold and bloodlines, make sure to watch my video on every rank and title in the wizarding world explained.